Hello dear students, welcome back to Bajirao IAS Academy. So we are very close to prelims examination, and next Sunday we are going to face the prelims exam. So in this very short and very brief period of time, so what should be the strategy of the students? And I would suggest that please just revise whatever you have read, and if you have read current affairs for the examination, just revise them, but don't touch any other new topic. So you just have to focus on the revision, and at the same time you always maintain your calmness. So that is very important in this last 1 week. So if you get tensed, that will impact your performance in the examination. So therefore make sure that you follow a healthy schedule in this 1 week, and make sure you revise things, and make sure you also focus on all the formulas of CSAT, because CSAT, like last year, this year also will be a game changer. So therefore you have to focus, or you have to go through all the formulas, and also make sure whatever strategies you have for the comprehension part, so you should also go through all those strategies. But don't touch any other new topic. It is very common among the students that they may have fear that they have not read few subjects, or they have not covered few aspects. So therefore you just have one single week. So make sure that whatever you have read, just revise things. If you have a short notes, just revise the short note and go for the exam with full confidence, and I'm very sure that you will clear this prelims examination. And we are also regularly making efforts to well equip you to prepare for this examination. And when we are discussing these current affairs, so through our experience we are giving such current affairs which are there is a high probability of asking those questions or those topics in your examination, either one liner or multiple objective questions or multiple statement based questions, right? So today also we have a last a very important current affairs, and those current affairs are very important. Just a few issues that we left to discuss. We'll look into all those important current affairs in this lecture, and first we are going to start this discussion with a very important discovery, that is vanadium deposits discovery in India. And in fact, so vanadium is one of the metals. So it is a raw material for a wide variety of industries, for example aerospace industry and electric battery or electric vehicle manufacturing industry. Now when we look at this vanadium deposits discovery, so recently a sediment samples from Gulf of Cambat. We all knew that where this Gulf of Cambat is located, right? So Gulf of Cambat is located very near to the Gujarat. So this sediment samples of from the Gulf of Cambat, so that is located in Gujarat, they have revealed presence of vanadium samples. And in fact, when we talk about this vanadium is a raw material with diverse or wide variety of industrial applications. So it is in fact having a lot of industrial applications, and that is where it is very important, because we very often dependent on other countries for importing critical minerals, including rare earth metals also, including vanadium also. Now when we have more such discoveries in India, then we significantly reduce our reliance on other countries, our dependence on other countries, and that gives boost to Atmanirbharta, and that is where our governments have been emphasizing on, right? In fact, vanadium is a critical raw material with diverse industrial applications. However, the traces of vanadium in India were not just discovered, or they are not new, but because the vanadium was also previously discovered in different states. For example, the vanadium samples were discovered in Arunachal Pradesh, Karnataka, Odisha, and even Maharashtra also. So these vanadium samples also discovered. Now understand, minerals is also a very important topic for the UPSC. Now every year you can see UPSC asking one or two questions on these minerals also. So for example, last a few years there were questions on about the copper deposits in Rajasthan, and gold deposits in Andhra Pradesh. So such questions are being asked. So mineral regulation and mineral control, minor minerals and major minerals are also asked by the UPSC. So therefore there is a chance that these things are being asked, or these things that you can see in your examination, right? So there were previously also in Arunachal Pradesh, Karnataka, Odisha and Maharashtra, the vanadium samples are found. And in fact, these are the first documented occurrences of offshore sediments in India. So that Gulf of Combat. So offshore in the sense that they are not available, they are not found on the land, rather they found in the sea. Right. So in fact, this recent discovery of vanadium deposits is marking the first documented occurrence in the offshore sediments in India. Now, when we talk about this vanadium is rarely found naturally in its pure form. We cannot directly extract vanadium from the ore, right? Rather, it is being identified in the titanomagnetite. So it occurs in the form of titanomagnetite. Rather, it is not naturally found in its pure form. And in fact, this titanomagnetite is a mineral which is being formed during the rapid cooling of molten lava in the Gulf of Combat. So that is where that is when this titanomagnetite was formed, when there was a rapid cooling of molten lava in the Gulf of Combat. Right. So you can see there are different regions across the world with different mineral availabilities. Okay. Now the next very important topic is National Infrastructure Investment and Infrastructure Fund. So these type of funds may also be asked in your examination, right? So we'll talk about what exactly is this National Investment and Infrastructure Fund. So this is also known as NIIF. So this NIIF is an investor owned fund manager, right? So there are a lot of investors who invest in these funds, and these funds are being used for the development of infrastructure. And in fact, these funds are India's long-term funds, because India has a robust growth potential, and because of that reason it attracts investments from different parts of the world and even domestic investors also, and then they will part of it. So National Investment and Infrastructure Fund is an investor owned fund manager, and in fact it is anchored by the Government of India in collaboration with leading global and domestic institutional investors. So not just domestic investors, but the global investors can also invest in National Investment and Infrastructure Fund. Now when we talk about this NIIF, so it is India's first ever sovereign wealth fund, right? So it is first ever sovereign wealth fund which was set up in the year, which was established in the year 2015. Now sovereign wealth fund in the sense that, as I have already told you, that it is being anchored by the Government of India, and because of that reason we can say that this is a sovereign wealth fund, and it is India's first ever sovereign wealth fund. So in fact it is an institution specifically established for enhancing infrastructure financing, because understand that India's total infrastructure needs have been gradually increasing, and government has also focused on rapidly increasing investments in the infrastructure. So keeping this in mind, we need more and more investment, we need more finances. So in order to further enhance finances, this first ever sovereign wealth fund was created. So it is an institution for enhancing the infrastructure financing by investing in greenfield, brownfield and even the stalled projects. So what exactly is the primary goal of setting up this National Investment and Infrastructure Fund? Is to make sure that we optimize the economic impact largely through investing in infrastructure related projects. So essentially it is a first ever sovereign wealth fund, and it attracts investments from domestic investors and the global investors, and it is the first ever sovereign wealth fund that was created in the year 2015. I will proceed for the next topic, that is Global Innovation Index. So there is also a trend that UPSC asking about these in different reports and indexes. Now we'll understand what exactly is this Global Innovation Index 2023 and when it was published. So India has ranked 140th, or we can say that India retained the 40th rank out of 132 total economies in the Global Innovation Index 2023 rankings. Okay, so India's ranking is 40th in 2023 Global Innovation Index. Now, who releases this Global Innovation Index? So it is published by World Intellectual Property Organization. So World Intellectual Property Organization publishes the Global Innovation Index of 2023. And in fact, this Global Innovation Index is considered as one of the most reliable tool across the governments. Okay, so in the world, across the governments, the Global Innovation Index is considered as most reliable tool to assess the innovation-led social and economic changes in their respective countries. And India ranking 40th position in this Global Innovation Index is one of the significant milestone that indicating that India has been making tremendous progress in the field of innovation. So you just have to remember, and apart from that, it is also one of the reliable tool to assess the innovation in those respective countries. And in fact, this year, the Niti Aayog, in partnership with the CII and the World Intellectual Property Organization. Okay, so CII and World Intellectual Property Organization is hosting the India launch of GII 2023, Global Innovation Index 2023. Okay, so in September. So you can see on this image that which are the world's most innovative countries. Now, if you look at the countries, so Switzerland is on the top as a country with the highest innovation ranking in this Global Innovation Index, followed by Sweden, United States, United Kingdom, and Singapore. So they are top 5 countries in terms of innovation. Now just remember India's rank in the Global Innovation Index, and apart from India's rank, you also understand that which organization publishes or which institute publishes this Global Innovation Index. Okay, so that's important. So next we'll understand about this dedicated coal corridors. What exactly these dedicated coal corridors? Now you very often come across the concept of dedicated freight corridors that are being created across the country, or they were actually in construction phase, yet to be completed, the dedicated freight corridors. Now dedicated freight corridors essentially give they are planned to give boost to the industrial development, and that is one objective for the developing dedicated freight corridors. So on the similar lines of dedicated freight corridors, so or within these dedicated freight corridors, dedicated coal corridors are also being constructed, or the concept of dedicated coal corridors is also launched. Now I'll tell you what is the reason behind launching this dedicated coal corridors. So we all knew that India significantly dependent on coal for generation of electricity. And in fact, in India, energy demand is also significantly increasing. Okay, so there is no doubt about that. So every year, the energy demand has been significantly increasing, and coal is one, metal, or one raw material which we use extensively for the production of energy through our thermal power plants. Okay, so therefore, in this context, our the existing transportation, the railways are not able to supply adequate coal to these thermal power plants, and that leads to the inadequate capacity in terms of producing energy by the thermal power plants. So either through inadequate rake availability with the railways, or either with the existing tracks are inadequate to supply coal on time to these thermal power plants. Now all these factors were leading to the lesser generation of energy, and also the discoms were unable to supply the electricity for the consumers, and because of that reason, along the dedicated freight corridors, the dedicated coal corridors are also being created so that the coal would be supplied in a quick manner to all thermal power plants, and thereby we will meet the energy demand in a efficient manner. So we'll understand this. The dedicated coal corridors are actually an integral part of the dedicated freight corridors. So they are not independent of each other. So dedicated coal corridors actually forms part of the dedicated freight corridors. And in fact, these dedicated coal corridors are special railway corridors, and they solely dedicated to the transportation of coal. Okay, so the dedicated coal corridors are solely dedicated for the transportation of coal so that we can meet the energy demand. The thermal power plants are supplied with the adequate coal. Now the primary focus with respect to the dedicated coal corridors is to make sure that we facilitate the efficient movement of coal from the coal surplus regions or coal surplus states, because in India we have a number of coal surplus states, so which are with a lot of coal deposits. For example, Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, West Bengal. So these are the states with the coal deposits. So what we do, from these coal mines, we supply coal to the thermal power plants in a quick and much more efficient manner. Okay, so that is the objective of dedicated coal corridors creation, and these dedicated coal corridors are part of the dedicated freight corridors. And in fact, it is expected that India's coal consumption and energy demand would significantly increase to 1,853 million tons. 853 million tons and 3,000 billion units by 2030. As I've already told you that the energy demand has been significantly increasing, and this dedicated coal corridors would help us to meet the energy demand by quickly supplying coal from diverse coal producing regions to the thermal power plant, so that we'll not face the a problem with respect to the energy demand. So the next very important topic is Urban Infrastructure Development Fund. Right. So urban infrastructure is very, very important, especially for a country like India, because according to 2011 census, if I can provide you some census with respect to the urban population, it is said that 29% of India's population living in these urban cities or urban centers. And by 2030, it is expected that around 38 to 40% of India's total population would live in urban areas. So now we can say that the urban areas are growing, the population in those urban areas is actually growing, but the infrastructure in those urban areas is very often outdated and not supporting the growth of these urban areas. So therefore, it is very important that we must rapidly improve the urban infrastructure in order to keep pace with the growing urban development needs, urban development requirements. So for that particular purpose, this Urban Infrastructure Development Fund was created. Okay, so this Urban Infrastructure Development Fund is credited, or it is being created to address the priority sector lending. Okay, so it was created to address the priority sector lending, and it is also designed to fund urban infrastructure projects in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. Okay, so in India, based on population size and based on the development of those urban centers, so Indian cities are categorized into Tier 1, Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. So this Urban Infrastructure Development Fund is created to address priority sector lending shortfall. So we all knew that what exactly is this priority sector lending. Now, priority sector lending in the sense that in our banking sector, a certain sum of the money, for example, imagine that 100% of the amount is being given as loans by one single bank. For example, SBI gives loans that loan is known as 100% in one single year, and out of the 100%, 40% of the total loans must be given to the priority sector lending. Now the priority sector lending actually includes micro, small and medium enterprises, women empowerment or women entrepreneurs, renewable energy projects, waste to energy, farmers, agriculture sector. So all these sectors are considered part of the priority sector lending. So therefore, out of 100% of the loans given by a bank in one single year, 40% must be given as a priority sector lending. And in fact, the rural development and urban development may also comes part of the priority sector lending. So therefore, this urban infrastructure development fund was created to address this priority sector lending shortfalls. If priority sector lending is not addressing the urban infrastructure shortfalls, then this urban infrastructure fund would be able to create a better resilient infrastructure in those tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And the bank which actually manage this urban infrastructure development fund is National Housing Bank. So this National Housing Bank is managing the urban infrastructure development fund. And in fact, when we talk about the areas where the investments are being made in the infrastructure from this particular fund, including sewerage management, solid waste management, water supply, sanitation, and in fact these are one of the most important areas to invest, right? Sewerage, solid waste management, water supply, sanitation. So priority is actually given to the impact oriented projects. So the projects which creates a lot of impact in those urban areas, and those projects would be actually prioritized. Now when we talk about the total corpus of this urban infrastructure development fund, now the initial corpus, because see, understand that there were instances UPSC asking about such funds, and even UPSC has also asking about the corpus of those funds. So therefore we'll try to shed some light on these aspects also, so that you'll never miss anything with respect to these. So the initial corpus of this urban infrastructure development fund is rupees 10,000 crore. And in fact, it also operates on a model similar to the rural infrastructure development fund. Right, so this rural infrastructure development fund is managed by the NABARD, but urban infrastructure development fund is managed by National Housing Bank. And again, I am telling you that this urban infrastructure development fund total corpus is 10,000 crore. Right, so we'll proceed on to this next topic, that is petroleum coke. What exactly is this petroleum coke? Now we all knew that coal is a fossil fuel, and there are a number of fossil fuels which releases the greenhouse gases into the environment. So the release of greenhouse gases into the environment after burning fossil fuels is one of the major reasons for the climate change at the global level. And in fact, this petroleum coke is one of the form or one of the product of this fossil fuels. When we burn this petroleum coke also, it releases harmful greenhouse gases into the environment. However, this petroleum coke is an end product of refinery industries or processing of fossil fuels, but we'll understand what are the benefits. It has certain advantages and certain benefits also. Because of that reason, India is now the top importer or top consumer of this petroleum coke. Now recently, Union Government of India permitted the import of pet coke. So this petroleum coke is also known as pet coke. Right, so Union Government of India permitted the import of pet coke for making graphite anode material for lithium ion batteries. So we all knew that in electric vehicles, so lithium ion batteries plays a very important role. And in fact, the research is ongoing to reduce the size of these lithium ion batteries and increase their capacity. Right, so therefore the Union government has permitted the import of petroleum coke for making graphite anode material for lithium ion batteries. So when we talk about this petroleum coke, so it is a final carbon rich solid substance. So it actually has a huge carbon content, and even if we burn this petroleum coke, it releases harmful greenhouse gases into the atmosphere or into the environment. So therefore it is a final carbon rich solid substance. Now final in the sense that when we process these fossil fuels in a refinery industry, so the end product would be petroleum coke, and because of that reason it is a final product and it is also a carbon rich solid substance. So it is considered as a residual waste material which is being derived from refining of crude oil. So whenever the crude oil is being refined to derive multiple products, for example LPG, or for example petroleum, diesel, so this petroleum coke is generally the end product in this refinery industry. And apart from that, this petroleum coke is also a spongy like structure, and it is a solid residue from oil distillation. So it looks like a coal and it can be burned for a fuel, so it can be burned as a fuel, right? So therefore it is a byproduct of the extraction of bitumen from the tar sands. So we all knew that this bitumen is a black substance which is being used to lay roads, right? So therefore it is a byproduct of the extraction of bitumen from tar sands. So when we burn this petroleum coke, it releases toxic gases into the environment. So those toxic gases like carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, mercury, arsenic, chromium, nickel, hydrogen chloride, everything, whatnot. So it releases everything into the atmosphere when we burn the petroleum coke. So because of that reason, it is concerning, because one reason was it is releasing the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and the second reason is that it also releasing harmful gases into the environment. So that has resulting in air pollution and also having harmful impacts on the human beings' health. So that is a concern with respect to the petroleum coke. Now when we talk about India using petroleum coke, so India is the world's largest consumer of petroleum coke, and in fact India uses the large amount of this petroleum coke. So in fact India also imports more than half of its annual consumption primarily from USA. So most of India's imports of this petroleum coke are from USA. Now when we talk about this petroleum coke, it actually looks similar to this. Okay, so pet coke actually looks similar to this one. So that is why we have said that it is a carbon rich solid substance. However, it offers number of advantages. It is also important that apart from it is being releasing the greenhouse gases and harmful gases into the atmosphere, it also holds certain advantages. So because of that reason also the government has permitted the use of or import of pet coke. Okay, so what are those advantages? Now first and foremost, it is having a higher calorific value when we burn this particular pet coke compared to the coal. And another major advantage is that its hydrophobicity. So this hydrophobicity of pet coke actually repels water. Okay, so it will not absorb the coal, water is not absorbed by this pet coke. So apart from that, it also has a lower volatile matter content and a lower ash content as well. So all these factors have been making it a potential alternative for the coal. Okay, so because of these advantages, the pet coke is being increasingly used in India, and India is also the largest consumer and importer of pet coke. And the next important topic is with respect to the Codex Alimentaris Commission. So this Codex Alimentaris Commission is very often seen in news. So what exactly is this Codex Alimentaris Commission? And we very often heard about this, right? So now we'll try to understand what exactly is this Codex Alimentaris Commission. So India has been elected as a member representing the Asian region of the Executive Committee of this Codex Alimentaris Commission. So it is in news because India's recent election as an executive, as to the executive committee to represent the Asian region. Okay, so that was a meeting held at the Food and Agriculture Organization headquarters at Rome. Now, what exactly is this Codex Alimentarius? We'll understand this very briefly. We'll try to understand this. Okay, so this Codex Alimentarius was established in the year 1963. So this is a global organization that was established in 1963. So which organization establishes? The Food and Agricultural Organization established this Codex Alimentarius in 1963. So not just Food and Agricultural Organization, but World Health Organization and Food and Agricultural Organizations have established this Codex Alimentarius in 1963. Okay, so now what is the basic objective or purpose of establishing this Codex Alimentarius? Is to implement the food standard program, the joint food standard program of both Food and Agricultural Organization and World Health Organization. So that is the purpose for which this Codex Alimentarius was created. Okay, so the purpose of the program is to protect the health of the consumers from the adulterated food, or a food which is not actually meeting all the food standards, and also ensuring the fair practices in the food trade and coordinate international food standardization work also. So this Codex Alimentarius Commission is an intergovernmental body. Generally, what constitutes an intergovernmental body? A body where different countries are part of, right? So this Codex Alimentary Commission is also an international organization or an intergovernmental body. So a total of 189 Codex members. Okay, so out of 189 Codex members, 188 are member countries and one member is European Union, and India became the member of this Codex Alimentary Commission in 1964. So I hope you have understood briefly about this Codex Alimentarius Commission. So now when we talk about this Codex Alimentarius, in Latin it actually means the food code. Okay, so the meaning of Codex Alimentary Commission in Latin is a food code, and this codex standards are international food texts. For example, the food standards and the code of practice with respect to processing food, production of food, and also guidelines, setting up guidelines for the food processing, food production, and also other recommendations. All these things are being guided in the or as part of this Codex Alimentarius. And apart from that, this Codex Alimentarius Commission, they are not substitute for the or any alternative to the respective national laws. So after that, we'll briefly understand about this land remote countries. So what exactly these land remote countries? So when we talk about this land remote countries, so the term land remote countries is used to describe nations. There are certain nations that purchase Russian oil and export the processed refinery products to European countries. Okay. So in fact, these countries actually practice, they circumvent European sanctions imposed on Russia. So that is the problem here, because the land remote countries actually mean that, so those are the countries or those are the nations that actually purchase Russian oil. We all knew that because of this recent Russia and Ukraine war. So what happened with respect to this Russia-Ukraine war? Now all the European countries including US have imposed sanctions on Russia because of Russia's military aggression towards Ukraine. So they have imposed sanctions on Russia. So they stopped importing Russian gas and Russian oil after imposing sanctions and after Russia's military operation, special military operation against Ukraine. Now understand, this is very, very important term that you don't know about this. There is a probability or there is a chance that UPSC asking such a questions. Okay, so these land remote countries, it is actually a term that is used to describe nations which purchase Russian oil and export the processed refinery products to European countries. Now I will try to explain you in a very brief manner. Now understand that all the European Union countries are now not importing oil from Russia, and they have also imposed sanctions. So they are not importing LPG plus crude oil from Russia. So earlier they used to import. So why they stopped importing crude oil and natural gas from Russia? Because Russia attacked one of the key ally of West, so that is Ukraine. So because of Russia's special military operation on Ukraine, all these Western countries, including the European countries, have stopped importing crude oil and LPG from Russia. But now, on the other hand, countries like India and China have significantly increased their imports from Russia. So after European countries stopped purchasing oil from Russia, so countries like India and China have been importing a lot of crude oil into India. So after importing this crude oil, we have a robust refinery capabilities, right? We have a strong refinery capabilities in our country. So with the help of these refinery, we are refining the crude oil which is being imported from Russia, and then again we are selling the same refined crude oil to the European Union countries. And now in this case, India and China are called as laundromat countries. So I hope you have understood this laundromat countries. So this is used to describe nations that purchase Russian oil and export processed refinery products to European countries. So in fact, this particular practice of purchasing Russian oil, processing, refining it, and then selling this particular oil products to Europe is a practice that allows them to circumvent the European sanctions, right? So the European countries or any other countries have been circumventing the European sanctions which are being imposed on Russia. And there was a report from a Finland based group, so that is Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air. So that has been that report has revealed that India leads 5 countries named as laundromat countries. Now there are 5 different countries. Among all these countries, India topped in this laundromat countries because India has a robust refining capabilities. So because of that reason, India tops. Okay, so 4 laundromat countries are China, Turkey, UAE and Singapore. So these are 4 laundromat countries, and including India also, but India is on the top of the list. India importing crude oil from Russia and refining it and again selling it to the European countries to circumvent European sanctions. And the report suggests that Indian sellers of these refined products to European buyers may be circumventing the sanctions by selling the crude products from Gujarat refinery, which is being owned by the Russian oil company Rosneft. Okay, so this is how this is what this laundromat countries actually means. So the next important topic is greedflation. What exactly is this greedflation? We'll try to understand this. So greedflation is this is also a part of inflation, but this is artificial inflation. This is not a natural inflation, rather it is artificial inflation that is being guided by the greed of the corporate. Okay, so greed of corporate actually guiding the inflation. Now generally what exactly or what constitutes inflation? Now inflation is the general increase in the price levels, so that is inflation. Now when we talk about this greedflation, so this actually means that it is a term so that is coined to describe a situation where inflation is driven by corporate greed. Okay, so therefore because of that reason we said that it is also inflation, it is also increase in the price of various products, but it is not natural increase in the price of those goods, rather it is guided by the greed of people, especially the corporate market greed, so that has been driving up the prices. So this is known as greedflation, and this is also a very important term. Okay, so rather than the traditional economic factors such as supply chain issues and disruptions in the demand and supply things, so this greedflation is essentially guided by the greed of the corporate markets or corporate companies, right? So during greedflation, now what happens whenever there is an inflation or increased prices of goods? Okay, so this is a natural inflation. So whenever there is an inflation in the economy, what happens is that the corporate companies takes advantage of this inflation, and showing inflation as a reason, they also start increasing the prices of various goods. Okay, so the showing inflation as a reason, and also they also give their reason that due to inflation the profits of the company have been declining. So therefore, in order to increase the profits of the company due to inflation, so what they will do, they further increase the prices, and that's where this greedflation further increasing the prices of goods and services. And in fact, it is considered as one of the unethical way of increasing the prices by these corporate markets. So therefore, the greedflation actually suggests that companies are deliberately raising the prices to take advantage of the existing inflationary conditions, and they wanted to boost their profits. Okay, so now when they are increasing these prices, it actually exceeding what is necessary to cover their own increased costs. Okay, so that where it is leads to the hyperinflation or excess inflation, and that is known as greedflation. In recent times also, this greedflation is seen across the world. So therefore, when we look at the greedflation, there is a growing consensus in Europe and all the countries in Europe and US that greedflation is the true culprit, as it is the primary cause of inflation in US and Europe. So they wanted to act on this greed of the corporate, so that leading to the or increasing or driving the prices. So the next a very important aspect is eco-sensitive zones. See, there is a chance that these type of questions are being asked in UPSC eco-sensitive zones, because earlier with respect to eco-sensitive zones, Western Ghats, so there were two important committees that were appointed to look after the Western Ghats or declaring Western Ghats as eco-sensitive zones. For example, we need to talk about this Kasturi Rangan committee. Okay, so Kasturi Rangan committee, Dr. Kasturi Rangan committee. So this particular Kasturi Rangan committee was appointed with respect to the Western Ghats and declaring Western Ghats as the eco-sensitive zones. And apart from Kasturi Rangan committee, there is also another important committee also on the Western Ghats, and that has also made some important recommendations with respect to the eco-sensitive zones. Okay, now what are these eco-sensitive zones? So these eco-sensitive zones are certain sensitive areas. So they are environmentally fragile and very sensitive areas, and those areas require minimal human interference or intervention. And those areas are declared under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. Under Environment Protection Act of 1986, so these eco-sensitive zones are being declared. Okay, so when we talk about these eco-sensitive zones, so they are created as a shock absorbers. So they absorb the shock which is being inflicted by the human beings on the environment. So they are created as shock absorbers for the protected areas, and especially to minimize the negative impact on the fragile ecosystems. For example, when we talk about the Western Ghats are fragile ecosystems. So therefore, it is very important that we have to protect these eco-sensitive areas or eco-sensitive zones from human activities taking place nearby. For example, mining, developmental activities, commercial activities, constructions. So we need to protect the fragile zones from the human interference or human activities. So for that particular purpose, these eco-sensitive zones are mandated under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. So as per the National Wildlife Action Plan 2002 to 2016, the land within 10 kilometers of the boundaries of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, so they have to be recognized or notified as a eco-fragile zones or eco-sensitive zones. So they have to be recognized as eco-fragile areas or eco-sensitive zones. And apart from that, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change also notifies these eco-sensitive zones. So what is the basis of announcing these eco-sensitive zones by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change? So the basis is the proposals and recommendations of the state government. So based on the basis of the proposals, the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change notifies these eco-sensitive zones. So how these eco-sensitive zones are actually classified into the different areas. So the classification is done as I have given here. So there are certain activities which are prohibited in this eco-sensitive zones. Now what are those activities which are being prohibited, and what are the activities which are being regulated? They're not completely prohibited, but these activities are regulated, and there are also certain activities which are permissible in these eco-sensitive zones, and there is a probability that you may get question on this. So what are the activities which are prohibited, permitted and regulated? Now when we talk about this prohibited activities in these eco-sensitive zones, for example, large scale commercial mining is prohibited, and setting up industries, especially the polluting industries in these eco-sensitive zones, is not at all allowed. So this is the second prohibited category of activity. And thirdly, the commercial use of firewood would not be prohibited, and establishment of major hydroelectric projects all across these eco-sensitive zones is also strictly prohibited under this. However, there are certain activities which are being considered regulated aspects or regulated activities. What are those activities? For example, felling of trees is part of regulated activity, establishment of hotels, widening of roads, introduction of exotic species, signboards and hoardings. So all these are regulated activities in these eco-sensitive zones. However, there are certain permissible activities. So these activities are allowed in these eco-sensitive zones. Now, what are those activities? So they include the ongoing agricultural practices, horticultural practices by the local communities who are residing in these eco-sensitive zones. And secondly, the water harvesting which is being done by the people who are living over there, and organic farming and use of renewable energy sources. So all these activities comes under the permissible categories of eco-sensitive zones. So the next very important topic is Global Biofuel Alliance, and this Global Biofuel Alliance was launched by India during its G20 presidents. Now we all knew that in last lecture also we have understood that India, along with different other countries in the Middle East and Europe, USA, has launched India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, right? So India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor was launched during India's G20 presidency. And on a similar way, the Global Biofuel Alliance was also launched by India. Now, what is the objective of this Global Biofuel Alliance? Reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. We wanted to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels because the fossil fuels have been significantly contributing to the global warming. And at the same time, through the Global Biofuel Alliance, make a rapid transition of our economies into green economies. The development must be green, in a way. Now, when we talk about this Global Biofuel Alliance, it was launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on September 2023 during the G20 summit. So, during the G20 summit, this Global Biofuel Alliance was launched. Now, when we talk about this Global Biofuel Alliance, this is a multi-stakeholder alliance of different partners. For example, governments are part of this alliance, international organizations, industries, countries. So everyone are part of this Global Biofuel Alliance, and it is not just an intergovernmental organization, rather multiple stakeholders can actually part of this Global Biofuel Alliance. Now, who are the members of this Global Biofuel Alliance? So the members of the Global Biofuel Alliance include a number of countries. For example, this Global Biofuel Alliance is primarily led by India. However, with India, there are a number of other countries. For example, with support from Brazil and United States, this Global Biofuel Alliance was launched during the G20 summit. Countries that are not part of this G20 can become members of the Global Biofuel Alliance. For example, in G20 there are 19 countries, and European Union are part of the G20 summit. And recently also with the India's initiative, African Union has also become part of the G20 grouping, right? So total we can say that G21. However, when we talk about this Global Biofuel Alliance, even though it was launched during the G20 summit, the countries outside the G20 summit can also become part of the Global Biofuel Alliance. So they can just give their endorsement to the foundational document. Now, what exactly is the objective of this global biofuel alliance? Why it was created? As I've already told you, that reduce dependence on the fossil fuels by these countries and rapidly scale up the infrastructure with respect to the biofuel production. So therefore, we need to we need to leverage the transformative potential of biofuels with respect to economic growth, rural development, energy self-sufficiency, and we should reduce air pollution and global transition into the clean energy. And all these are the basic objectives of Global Biofuel Alliance. So that is why it was launched. And next very important topic is National Clean Air Program. What exactly is this National Clean Air Program? And when it was launched, we'll understand this in a very detailed manner, right? So this National Clean Air Program was launched in the year 2019. So in 2019, National Clean Air Program was launched. And in fact, this National Clean Air Program is India's very important and a flagship program for better quality and at the same time to tackle air pollution problem across the country. So we will tackle the air pollution problem in a much more comprehensive manner through this National Clean Air Program that was launched in the year 2019. Okay, so what is the objective? What is the aim of this National Clean Air Program? So 20% to 30% reduction in the particulate matter, PM. Okay, so we will reduce 20% to 30% of the particulate matter concentrations by 2024. Okay, so what is the basis? What is the base year to reduce 20% and 30% reduction in particulate matter by 2024? So the base year is 2017 would be taken as base year to reduce 20%, 30% reduction in particulate matter. So under this National Clean Air Program, there are around 132 non-attainment cities, and these 132 non-attainment cities have been identified across the country. So which is based on the air quality data from 2014 to 2018. Now what are these non-attainment cities? We need to understand about that. Okay, so non-attainment cities are those cities that have fallen short of this National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Now earlier the governments have launched National Ambient Air Quality Standards Program. Now under this Ambient Air Quality Standards Program, the air quality in those cities is regularly measured. Okay, so regularly updated with respect to the harmful gases concentration in the environment, right? So if there are any cities which are actually not meeting the standards of National Ambient Air Quality over last 5 years, then National Clean Air Program would be launched in those cities. However, the nodal ministry for this National Clean Air Program is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, is the nodal ministry for the implementation of National Clean Air Program. So the next very important topic is Chandrayaan 3. Now we'll understand what exactly is this Chandrayaan 3. So it is a very important topic from your examination perspective, because India has become the first country to launch a lander and a rover to the far side of the moon, to the southern pole of the moon, and in fact India is the first country to do so. So no other country has achieved this feat earlier, but India is the only country to do so. Now after India, there were a number of other countries which followed India, and China also recently landed their rover on the far side of the moon. This Indian Space Research Organization, so it has launched its third lunar mission. Okay, so it has launched its third lunar mission. So this third lunar mission is known as Chandrayaan 3. Chandrayaan 3. So what is the objective of Chandrayaan 3? So this actually aims to be the world's first mission to soft land near the lunar south pole. Okay, so making a soft landing on the south pole of the moon is the objective of Chandrayaan 3. And what was the launch vehicle which was used to launch Chandrayaan 3? So this LVM-3. Okay, so launch vehicle Mark 3. So that was used to launch Chandrayaan 3, and in fact it is one of the heavy lift launch vehicle. The LVM-3 is one of the heaviest lift launch vehicle that is being used to send interplanetary missions, communication satellites, etc. And again, I'm telling you that India is the first country to launch soft land on the far side of the moon, south pole of the moon. And apart from that, there's another feat that India becomes the fourth country along with US, Russia and China to successfully perform a controlled landing on the moon. So we have performed a controlled landing on the moon, and in fact India is the fourth country to do so. Now, what was the vehicle that was used to launch Chandrayaan 3? So that was launch vehicle Mark 3. So it was previously known as GSLV Mark 3, and GSLV Mark 3 or launch vehicle Mark 3 both are same. So this launch vehicle Mark 3 is a new heavy lift launch vehicle. Okay, so in ISRO's kitty, this LVM-3 is a heavy lift launch vehicle, as I have already told you. The total capability of LVM launch vehicle Mark 3 is near around 4,000 kilograms, and it has a 4,000 kilogram spacecraft launching capability to the geosynchronous transfer orbit in a cost effective manner. So it launches these satellites in a much more cost effective manner. So when we talk about this LVM-3, so it is configured as a 3-stage vehicle. Okay, so every vehicle has a different stages from its launch up to it reaches its final stages. It has a different phases or different stages. So this launch vehicle Mark 3 actually configured with the 3 important stages. So among the three important stages, 2 are solid strap-on most for example, these are strap-on boosters, and 2 are solid strap-on motors. They are also known as ES200, and 1 liquid core. Okay, so the 1 liquid core and 2 solid strap-on boosters. So these are the 3 phases of the launch vehicle Mark 3. And in fact, they also produce high thrust cryogenic upper stage. So this is a high thrust cryogenic upper stage, and these are very, very important to make sure that the launch vehicle escapes the effect of gravity. And it also successfully places satellites in case if it is used for the satellites, or for the successfully conducting any such launches, the GSLV Mark 3, which is a heaviest, will be used. Now, what is the basic difference between Chandrayaan 1 and Chandrayaan 2 missions? So we'll briefly understand the difference between both of these, Chandrayaan 1 and Chandrayaan 2. So when we talk about the Chandrayaan 1 mission, so this was launched in the year 2018, and launch vehicle that was used for Chandrayaan 1 was Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Now in Chandrayaan 1, it involved an orbiter. Okay, for example, this is moon, and around the moon, so there will be an orbiter. So through this Chandrayaan 1, orbiter was sent, and even an impactor was also sent. So this orbiter, which was sent through Chandrayaan 1, was the first to discover water on the moon. Now total number of days it was operational was 312 days till August 29, 2009. So the total days of operation of Chandrayaan 1 was 312 days till 29 August 2009. And again, we have another mission, Chandrayaan 2. So Chandrayaan 2 mission was launched in the year 2019 from again Sriharikota. However, this time we have used GSLV Mark 3, and it is now called as launch vehicle Mark 3. Right, so Chandrayaan 2 actually involves an orbiter like the first Chandrayaan 1, and then lander. So there will be a lander, and from the lander, so there will be a rover Pragyan. Okay, lander Vikram and rover Pragyan. However, there was a crash landing of Chandrayaan 2, a crash landing of the Vikram on the moon's surface. So therefore we can say that it was not successful in its complete form. Rather, it sent orbiter around the moon. Rather, the lander was crash landed, and because of that reason, Pragyan rover was not able to perform its operations. And in fact, it was India's first attempt to soft land near the south pole of the moon, and its lander crashed onto the lunar surface. So when Chandrayaan 2 was launched. Now, the next very important topic is Hycean planets. Now, what exactly is these Hycean planets, which are also very often in use? And if you go through the previous year questions of UPSC, you may have come across the term called Goldilocks zone. Okay, so I'm repeating it again, the Goldilocks zone. Now, what exactly is this Goldilocks zone? Goldilocks zone is a place, where the planets are placed, where the planets are actually positioned or placed, and the temperatures are not too high, and the planet is also not too cold or not too far from the its star, so that it is located in a position, it is located in a place where it is considered as a habitable zone. So these Hycean planets is also similar to the planets which are located in the habitable zone, like Earth. Now imagine that if you look at Earth is located in a habitable zone, not Mars or Mercury, Venus. Okay, but if you look at Mercury and Venus, there are the temperatures in those planets is very, very high. Now, what are these Hycean planets? Now, Hycean planets are a class of exoplanets that represent a potentially habitable category. Now, Hycean in the sense that, Hycean includes hydrogen and ocean together. Hycean, whenever the planets host ocean, whenever the planets have hydrogen gas, so there is a high probability that the planet is in the habitable category. The planet has a life. Okay, so we are searching for the extraterrestrial life, and in this search for extraterrestrial life, we are looking for the Hycean planets, or planets with both hydrogen and ocean. And these planets potentially the habitable category of planets. Now, when we talk about the atmospheric composition of these Hycean planets, so there is a presence of substantial hydrogen rich atmosphere on those planets, and at the same time the water vapor, such as presence of water vapor, because with the water vapor we can extract 2 hydrogen molecules and 1 oxygen molecule also. Okay, so when we talk about the habitability of such Hycean planets, Hycean include hydrogen and ocean. So the combination of liquid water, so through these oceans, and hydrogen rich atmosphere actually creates conditions, and those conditions are conducive for the life on those planets. Okay, so both presence of hydrogen and ocean create conditions, and those conditions are conducive for the life on those planets. And in fact, hydrogen is also essential element of life, and the presence of water in those planets offer a potential solvent for the biochemical processes, and because of that reason it is important to search for these Hycean planets. And next we'll talk about this Psyche mission. Okay, so this is also regularly in use. What exactly is this Psyche mission? So recently NASA's Psyche spacecraft is set to embark on a groundbreaking mission to explore a metal-rich asteroid which is named Psyche. Now you can see here, this is a metal-rich asteroid Psyche, and NASA's Psyche spacecraft is set to make a groundbreaking mission to asteroid Psyche. So this Psyche mission will explore for the first time ever a giant metal asteroid called Psyche. Okay, so this Psyche mission will explore the first time ever this giant metal asteroid called Psyche. So when we talk about the location of this Psyche asteroid, it actually orbiting around this asteroid belt. Okay, so it is between Mars and Jupiter. So this Psyche asteroid is orbiting around this Mars and Jupiter. So when we talk about this Psyche mission which is being launched by NASA, it is the NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, so that is also known as JPL. So this JPL, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, actually navigates its operations, and it will be looked upon by this particular mission. Okay, So next would be Agni missile. So what exactly is this Agni missile? So Agni prime missile. Okay, so this is also known as Agni prime missile. Okay, so this Agni prime missile is actually a two-stage canistered solid propellant missile. Okay, so this is known as a two-stage. So earlier I've told you that this Chandrayaan mission. So Chandrayaan mission is a Chandrayaan 3 is a three-stage LVM-3. So Chandrayaan 3 was launched through launch vehicle Mark 3. Now in a similar way, this Agni prime is also a two-stage canistered solid propellant missile. So with the dual redundant navigation and the guidance systems. Okay, so this Agni prime is actually the nuclear capable missile. So this is a nuclear capable missile in the sense that it can carry the nuclear warheads to the far off places, and that is known as the nuclear capable missile, and this is a two-stage canistered solid propellant missile, and it has been designed and developed by Defense Research and Development Organization. Right, so the Defense Research and Development Organization has actually developed this Agni prime missile, and in fact it is a surface to surface ballistic missile, and it has a range of 1000 to 2000 kilometers. Right, so the total range of Agni prime missile is 1000 to 2000 missiles, and also understand that it is a surface to surface ballistic missile. So surface to surface ballistic missile in the sense that it can be launched from the surface, and it hits the targets on the surface of the enemy territory. And in fact, when we talk about this Agni prime missile, it is the smallest and lightest among all the entire Agni series of ballistic missiles. And when we talk about the total weight of this Agni prime missile, so it is just a 50% less weight compared to the Agni 3 missile, and it has new guidance and propulsion systems. Okay, so these are the list of Agni 5 missiles. They are being developed under the Integrated Guided Missile Development Program. So this under Integrated Guided Missile Development Program, so 5 different missiles are being developed: Agni, Nag, Trishul, Akash. So those different missiles are being developed under this Integrated Guided Missile Development Program. So for example, when we talk about Agni 1, it is a short to medium range ballistic missile, range 700 to 800 kilometers. So in a similar way, Agni 2 is a medium range ballistic missile, and it is equipped with 2 solid fuel stages, and its range is 2000 kilometers. So the next is Konark Wheel. So this Konark Wheel is also very often in news in recent times, particularly because of this G20 summit, and you have also seen very often this wheel on the backdrop of G20 summit, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi receiving all the dignitaries from different countries who are the members of G20, right? So what exactly is this Konark Wheel, and why it is very famous? Now the replica of this Konark Wheel from the Sun Temple in Odisha's Puri actually served as the backdrop of the G20 summit. So we all knew about that, right? So it was served as a replica. There was a replica of this Konark Wheel, and that was fixed in the G20 summit. Okay, so when we talk about this Konark Sun Temple, it was built in the 13th century by King Narasimhadeva I. So King Narasimhadeva I built this Konark Sun Temple, and this Narasimhadeva I belonged to the Eastern Ganga dynasty, and in fact this Konark Sun Temple is also UNESCO's World Heritage Site. Right, so this is UNESCO's World Heritage Site, the Konark Sun Temple, and it was built by King Narasimhadeva I of Eastern Ganga dynasty. Now apart from that, the Konark Wheel also follows the Kalinga or Odisha style of architecture. Okay, so that is a distinct style of architecture, either the Kalinga style of architecture or Odisha style of architecture. It is a distinct style of architecture, and it is also a subset of the Nagara style of Hindu architecture. Okay, now what exactly is this Nagara style of temple architecture? Nagara style of temple architecture is the temple architecture that we found in northern India, and Dravidian style of temple architecture is a distinct style of temple architecture that we found in the southern India. Okay, so therefore we can say that this Kalinga or Odisha style of temple architecture is actually the subset of, or it is a subset or sub form of this Nagara style of Hindu temple architecture. Now when we talk about this Konark Sun temple, it represents the wheel of the sun. Okay, so it actually represents the wheel of the sun god's chariot. So this particular wheel of this Konark temple has 24 spokes, and which can be used as a sundial. So these 24 spokes are actually used as a sundial. So by observing this shadow cast by these spokes, one can determine the approximate time of this day. Approximate time of the day can be determined by using these spokes of this particular wheel. This temple was called as Black Pagoda in European sailors' accounts. And apart from this, there is also Jagannath Puri temple, and this Jagannath Puri temple is called as White Pagoda. But on the other hand, the Konark Sun temple is known as Black Pagoda. The next very important topic is green taxonomy. Now, what exactly is this green taxonomy? Now, green taxonomy is a framework, right? So where that is used to determine the environmentally sustainable investment. So any investment which is environmentally sustainable investment or not can be understood through this green taxonomy. Right, so green taxonomy actually helps in classification of whether economic activities are green and environmentally sustainable. So we get to know about this, whether these projects, investments, infrastructure, so the different types of categories, whether they are sustainable, environmentally sustainable, whether they can be green or not, can be understood through this green taxonomy, and that is the utility of it. Okay, so the overall objective of this green taxonomy is to increase investment in the green activities and assets, and also facilitate detection of the greenwashing practices. Now, what exactly is this greenwashing practices? Now, greenwashing practices are the practices which are followed by certain corporate sections, even though their products are not produced in an environmental sustainable manner. They often portray among the consumers that these products are actually the green products, even though those products are not environmental sustainable products, and those products are known as greenwashed products. Now, what exactly is the necessity of incorporating this green economies? What is the need? Now, green taxonomies helps the financial markets to align their investments. Okay, for example, any corporate group which is environmentally conscious, or any individual who is environmentally conscious, so he can invest in these projects which are green, considered green, categorized as environmentally sustainable, to align their investments with the goal of net zero emissions. Now, apart from that, it also helps in the cultivation of an environmentally sustainable economy. So it also helps in cultivation of environmental sustainable economy, and it also reorient capital towards the environmentally sustainable economic activities. So that is the utility of green economy in our countries. Okay, so that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also hit the like button, and thank you.